Hi, I'm John McGann, a member of the First Church of Christ Science in Hartford, Connecticut. With me is Patricia Woodard, speaking to us from her home in Texas. She is a Christian Science practitioner and a member of the Christian Science Board of Lectureship. Thank you for being with me today, Patricia. Thank you for tuning in today to hear more about our upcoming free public lecture on Christian Science. It's taking place on Sunday, April 16th at 2 p.m. in the West Hartford Town Hall Auditorium. The lecture is titled, Never Too Late to Experience Freedom. Patricia, why don't we begin there? What does this title mean, and what will you be talking about?
Well, first off, I just would like to thank you for bringing this lecture on Christian Science, and one of my favorite topics on freedom, and never too late to experience freedom. And what this says to us, we're so used to the news of the day and everything seems to be too late. And yet at the same time, we just finished March Madness, which in Portuguese, I'd say, parabéns, Connecticut Huskies, you won. But one of the things that we learned through sports, it is never too late. You know, that's what was so great about this March Madness, so to speak. It's never too late, and it is never too late to be free. It's this change of perspective to what God is doing, what infinite good is doing, that will bring change and healing to our lives. And that's what we'll be exploring together in this talk.
That sounds really interesting. You know, I'm interested to ask if you could tell us a little bit about your background in Christian Science. I was raised in another religion, and I wondered about you. I'm always curious about Christian Scientists and how they became Christian Scientists.
My background, I too came to Christian Science from another Christian denomination. In fact, I came as a young questioning teen, and in fact, I had lots of questions, and I was probably within a nanosecond of just leaving church entirely because I couldn't get my questions answered. But even if you have questions, obviously you're a thinker, and that's a good thing out there for any of you who might have similar kinds of questions, and questions about freedom and your day. So I thought, well, I need to explore other churches, and perhaps another church might have the answer for me. And I went through a whole list of various churches, and the very last church that was on the list was Christian Science. And I can still feel the sunlight of that Sunday morning, because all of my questions were answered. And my big question was about healing, that Jesus healed, and it was natural. It wasn't miraculous. In fact, there was healing throughout the scriptures, the older scriptures, and I was not aware of that. You know, I knew the older scriptures, but that was just sort of skipped over. And so, yeah, it answered my questions. And shortly after that, it answered my questions. So yes, I wanted to keep going and learn more about healing, because the other kids in the class, they would bring all kinds of things to the table to talk about. Problems, whether school or a relationship or a physical healing. And shortly after deciding, yes, I'm going to continue coming to this church, I had the opportunity to prove whether everything I was hearing actually worked, that is, healed. And I broke my arm, and thought, okay, here's your opportunity. And within a couple weeks of praying how I was learning that God, infinite good is all, and that I was God's image and likeness. And within 2 weeks, well, the pain immediately stopped. And within 2 weeks, I was healed. And people might ask, and they have asked me, but how did you know that you actually broke it? Maybe it was a sprain. Well, my mother was a medical nurse, and she was in total disbelief about this healing. So she took me to a doctor for an x-ray, and the doctor, and she holding up the x-rays, said, indeed, she broke her arm, but it has mended perfectly. And so this has set me on my journey in Christian Science, which is really Jesus's Christianity. And Jesus's Christianity was just all encompassing. He wasn't setting up a separate church of dogma or doctrine.
I'm sorry, I missed that last part.
The last part, that Jesus he was about the truth. He wasn't about establishing a church with a separate doctrine or dogma.
Yes.
And healing, something that I didn't realize as a young teen, healing had sort of vanished in Jesus's day, but all throughout the older scriptures, there is healing, right from Moses's time.
Yes, it is really interesting that healing's a big part of Christian Science, and but the thing that struck me most of that is I'm a Christian Scientist. I attribute it to my wife's mother, and my wife's mother was a 10 or 11-year-old girl, and she got sick and tired of the church that she was attending. She started to skip Sunday school because she couldn't get answers to all her questions. But she went to a Christian Science church, and her friends said, "Oh, they'll answer all your questions." And so, and that's why she became a Christian Scientist, and consequently, her daughter and me. So, will there be a chance for people at the lecture to ask you questions afterwards?
Yes. I'm going to add a however to it, in that I answer questions at the end, and I do it individually, in that sometimes what happens when you answer questions in a public forum, that someone doesn't want to hear that question. They just want their question answered and may leave. So I do answer questions, and I am happy to take them one-on-one. And the other thing that I see in lectures is that the members of that local branch church also are really happy to talk with individuals that may have questions and share from their experiences as well.
Yes,
lots of opportunity to have your questions answered.
Yes, we I think a lot of Christian Scientists look for opportunities to talk to people who are interested, and I'm sure there'll be a lot there who would love to. And I wanted to ask too. I wanted to ask what the purpose of the lecture is.
Well, there it is in the title, about freedom. And it seems as if there is so much hopelessness today, that whether it's the environment, illness, social injustice, power, and yet in Jesus's times, individuals faced these very same problems: social injustice, sharp political and religious differences, famine, incurable diseases. And many of those diseases are still present and not curable. And yet Jesus had the solution to all of these problems 2,000 years ago. And that's what we will be exploring. Jesus stated, "You will know the truth, and the truth will make you free." So we'll be exploring, what is this truth that will bring us freedom from, could be an addiction, loneliness, a severe illness, financial difficulties. So we will be exploring the ideas that will free us, and I'll be sharing examples of healings of myself and other individuals.
Great, sounds good. Do you think Christian Scientists have a different perspective on freedom and what it really means than other religions?
Well, yeah, yes and no. In that, I think in every heart, we really do know what freedom actually is. And it's not, I can do what I want to do. It's much deeper. And the reason that I say this is I'm a volunteer prison chaplain. And here are individuals, many who have been incarcerated for 20 years or so, and do have a religious background, and yet they're not feeling free of their past or whatever. And I love it when someone will say, well, what took you so long to get here? Or how come I haven't known about this? Because it is something that is so natural to each of us, and I've found it, I've found those same questions or that same confirmation, whether I'm at a ticket counter, at an airport or a car rental agency, or about to land in an airplane, and somebody says, so what brings you here? And then I start talking about the lecture and about all of us having one source, and having one source being brethren. And I have not met anyone to date who has said no to that. It is written in every heart.
That's great. I wanted to ask a little bit more about your chaplaincy in the prisons. Can you talk about that a little bit? And also, I think, how did it shape this talk?
That's a good question, how it shaped this talk. I'm not sure that it shaped this talk as much as what I have learned from being a volunteer prison chaplain. As I said, it is something that is written in every single heart. And what happens is that we get put in these boxes. The box may be class, race, or gender. And in this talk, I spent some time about breaking free of these boxes, and how we break free of them is the very fact that we are made in the image and likeness of God's Spirit. That just can't be put in a box. It is free to be what it is, our real identity. And that has brought tremendous, healing to those on the outside, and tremendous peace and understanding to people incarcerated from all kinds of backgrounds and religious faiths, or nones, because it's really true. And what is this truth? Well, we'll talk about the fundamentals of it. And the fundamental I've touched on a couple times already, saying it's the truth. And this truth is we are all from one source. And as we change our perspective from me in that box to the perspective of God, infinite good, and what God is doing, this brings healing freedom.
That's great. Yeah, I think it's important to, as Christian Scientists, that we understand that it's not freedom to do. We don't have freedom uh, of choice. It's not freedom of choice that's so important. I think it's the freedom to be ourselves and to express our identity, and that's what we naturally want to do. And I really appreciate you talking that. Do you think that the prisoners that you talk to, what kind of insights do they gain about the freedom that's available? Them being some of the least free people in our society, I guess. What kind of insights do they gain from your work with them about what real freedom is?
Well, I'll never forget this one young man who who started coming to the services that we hold. When he first came, very dark and deep depression. And yet, as I got to know him, realized, oh my goodness, yes, here is a young man, maybe in his 30s at that point. He has already served a good length of time, and he has life in front of him. He one day said to me, he said, I want what you have. And we talked about what we have and what he has as the child of God. Not too long after he started attending services, he walked in one day just upright. That dark cloud was gone. I said to him, you have what you've been seeing. You're just exuding it, which he said, yes, I'm feeling it. And he got up in one of our meetings and said, see those bars out there? Well, I realize I am not confined by those bars. I am free. And I don't have enough time to discover more about me and my God-given freedom. I don't have enough time. It was so beautiful. And he is a member of another denomination. And that's what he ended up saying. He said, this is just making me a better Christian. That's what Jesus's Christianity is about. It's about our God-given identity that just cannot be confined in a box, whether that box is, a disease or that you can't do this, or a learning disability, or a mental problem, or you're at the end of the line in a career. There really are infinite possibilities, and that is explored in this talk, and concrete examples.
Will people have to know anything about Christian Science or to appreciate this talk?
Absolutely, absolutely not. What this lecture does, it leads all of us, me too, leads us gently into this shift of perspective, and builds slowly on this idea, and it shows how a shift of perspective brings healing, whether it's the first healing that I share after talking about some of these ideas that free us is of my dear friend's son who had a serious lung disease, and he was not going in the right direction. He was on a downhill slide, and how he experienced a very quick healing after she called. And by the way, did I add that my dearest friend is a medical nurse, and until recently, she was a charge nurse at a very prestigious hospital in the Boston area. And it was one of those never too late healings.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. Um, A lot of people ask me, or it comes up in conversation with people who don't know too much about Christian Science, if Christian Science is based on the Bible. Do you Is that the case?
A- Absolutely. That's where the discovery began. Mary Baker Eddy is the founder and discoverer of Christian Science. And she, since she was a young girl, by the way, she lived in the 1800s, had a very long life, which women weren't, not only were women not expected to work or be outside of the house or anything else, but their life expectancy wasn't very long either. And she had had a serious accident and had been looking for an understanding of God that would heal individuals. So for her, it was very natural to turn to the Bible. And that led to her recovery of this accident that no one expected her to recover from. And so she continued studying the Bible to find the answers, how this occurred. And what she discovered was that there's an underlying principle that's governing the universe. And that underlying principle is divine love itself.
That's
And so, well, I maybe I haven't put a punctuation on it. So yes, Christian Scientists study the Bible daily, along with the book that Mary Baker Eddy wrote. And the reason that she wrote it, she was encouraged to by a prestigious doctor of that time who had witnessed this healing. And so she wrote a book called Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures. And this book, along with the Bible, is the pastor of Christian Science churches. And she spent a lifetime. She spent the next 40 years. She was in her mid 40s when she discovered Christian Science. And she spent the next 40 years revising this textbook to get it right for us. That's how much she loved mankind.
I know when I first became a Christian Scientist, that it really did clear up the Bible for me. I used to read the Bible and go, this is, I don't know what this means. And I'd have a lot of questions about it. But, and I had studied the Bible, pretty thoroughly, more so now. But when I was a young man, I did spend a lot of time with it. But I often had to just walk away from passages. And I found since I've been reading Science and Health and looking into that, you generally, and doing the when you spoke of the pastor, we have a Bible lesson in Christian Science. When you do the Bible lesson, you hardly ever read a section of the Bible that's followed by a reading from the Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures by Mary Baker Eddy that doesn't clear up what's gone. And I found it a tremendous help. I can't believe it, but we only have like a few minutes left, and I have some important things to say, and not more important than what you've said, but I would like people to know.
The more important is coming to this talk, because it really is about bringing freedom to all of us, and breaking free of these boxes that would try to separate us, and coming into the naturalness. Indeed, we are the children of God.
So great. Well, we are looking forward to sharing these powerful ideas with our community, and our listeners can find details about these events at our website, which is christiansciencehartford.com. I'll repeat that again, christiansciencehartford.com. That's the church website. Have all the information about this and other information about our church. Once again, the talk will take place on Sunday, April 16th at 2 p.m. at the West Hartford Town Hall Auditorium in West Hartford Center. And everyone is welcome. There will be free childcare will be provided, and we will have a comfortable space for young people to work on quiet activities while listening to the lecture. We have light refreshments and free literature on Christian Science will be available. And the auditorium is near bus lines, and parking is free at the Town Hall parking lot with validation. Our volunteers will be there to help with the validation. All you really have to do is bring in your license plate number, and we'll make sure that you get free parking from the town. And the event is open to all, and we hope to see you there. And I want to thank you, Patricia, for talking with us today, and we look forward to your talk. So nice to see you again.
I look forward to seeing all of you too.
Yes, that'll be wonderful.
Bye now.
Thank you so much.